Hello and welcome to Horse Illustrated's webinar series. My name is Mary Cage. I am the digital manager here at Horse Illustrated, so I'll be your host today. And of course, we're so thrilled to welcome Max Corcoran as our guest this month. She is a longtime professional eventing groom, and she's had so many other titles within the equestrian world, especially within eventing, including U.S. Eventing Association President and U.S. Equestrian Eventing Elite Program and Team Facilitator. She was a vital member of the O'Connor event team, obviously pretty iconic within the eventing industry. She worked alongside Karen and David O'Connor and their horses for 11 years and continues to groom for top 3-day event riders. And she also teaches horsemanship clinics and helps organize horse trials. So a lot of ground to cover and many things that we can learn from Max today. So Max, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping with the fun vibes, I always like to start by asking if you can tell us the story of how you very first fell in love with horses.
Oh, I mean, I didn't really come from a horsey family. My parents, I mean, I grew up in New England, so we were, skiing and ice skating and hiking and doing that type of thing. But my best friend, when I was in 4th grade, took riding lessons, so I decided I wanted to as well. So that was sort of how I got bit by the horse bug. And then because it was not the most, it's expensive to, as you keep going, you do your one lesson a week and that's fine, but I wanted to do more. And to be able to pay for that, they offered me to do some work at the barn and let me sort of work off some of my lessons. So that's how I sort of got hooked into wanting to be with them all the time.
Yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of us barn kids start out, is like, okay, well, how can I just work it off and put in some sweat equity for this?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
And so I know you kind of, also were into, like you said, hockey and things like that, and you went to university, and then, went on to a career outside of horses. But was it always kind of there in the back of your mind that maybe you wanted to spend your whole life working with them?
Pretty much. I knew that I wanted to, they would always, at the time you feel like when you're, 18, 19, 20, and you think you can't miss a moment. And then, people kept saying the horses will always be there, and they are always there. And there's definitely moments that you'll miss, but there's a lot more to happen. I won't ever regret I will never regret finishing college and getting to have all those experiences and working, playing I played ice hockey at Northeastern University, and that was great. And the teamwork and understanding the team. And I think a little bit of like the elite program that was designed for the skaters and stuff, and that I got to be a part of, sort of helped sort of let me understand better when I got to the elite level and the eventing. It's a lot of dedication, and it's a lot of hours of selflessness, and you have to, I say that, but you have to be selfish and selfless at the same time, because you need to look after yourself. You have to be dedicated, but at the same time you have to give. Sometimes you have to compromise some of that for the better of the team and the sport and all that type of stuff too. So that's a long answer to a very short question.
No, that's great. That's great. And I know something that had a big impact on your journey with horses early in life was you were actually a working student for Bobby Costello, who of course is very accomplished eventer in his own right, and was just recently the U.S. Equestrian Chef to Keep and all of that. So how much of an impact did he have on you, and what was it like learning from him at such a young age?
Oh, he had a huge impact. He was sort of the first person that he went to college too. He went to university, went to UMass, and he actually, not many people know this, but he is a trained concert pianist. And that was his major in college, and he is a really good piano player. But so that was his major, but he, kept coming back to ride the horses, and I would sort of pal around with him and bum around with him, and we would, have to set up the hunter ring at one of the local shows, and just sort of learn that part of it, that he said, if you want to do this, then you have to give back to this, like you have to be part of it, so yes, in a lot of ways he was a major impact, not only for the riding part of it, but for continuing to be, to go to college, to do those things, and to also be part of the community itself to help. If you want the riding community to be better, you have to become a part of it. So he sort of a little bit taught me that at an early age, and was always, he also taught me how to drive a standard, and he taught me how to pop start a car, and he, he taught me a lot of things other than just riding, and how to set a distance on a 100 course when we were, the Myopia Horse Show in 1984, whatever it was, So we, and it was fun to get, to watch him go to the Olympic Games, and I was like, I know him. And then getting to work with him was also a real treat. And, it's great. I now run the events in Southern Pines at the Carolina Horse Park. So I get to catch up with him when I'm there too. So it's fun to keep intertwining with him. Yeah, he's so wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, like you said, your lives continue after all this time to stay intertwined. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's the horse industry, right? It can be a very
it
small
is.
world.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things I really kind of want to focus on is grooms, of course, are kind of unsung heroes of the horse world. And I think it's also a pretty misunderstood role. Can you kind of explain to those who may not know exactly what a groom role is and why they're so important, and maybe some responsibilities that are under a groom's umbrella that people may not realize?
Well, um, we're basically, I mean, the long and the short of it, we're basically the horse's nannies in a broader spectrum of, to put it in simple terms. I mean, we are responsible for, the day-to-day care, making sure they have everything they need, and not only that, but then we also have to notice when things aren't right, and we have to notice that. It's one of those things, you get to know these animals so well, and if we can pick up any little subtle differences or changes, so then we can, right the ship quicker, as they say, if you notice it quickly, then it's just not that far to get it back onto track. But if you don't notice it that quickly, then it can tip over. So
Mhm.
we are their friends. They're our friends too, but we're basically their voice, in a lot of ways. And also with that comes with the communication with the rider. So we sort of are part of a team of people, especially at the elite level. There's a group, your rider, the groom, your vet, your trainer, your farrier, whatever it is. There's a team of people that sort of work with that horse to make that horse as great as they can be. And you as the groom sort of are the communication between all the people to make sure that that horse has what they need, and what they don't need, and all those types of things. So it's a very important role. It's nice in the last sort of 10 or 15 years, grooms have really beginning to get more acknowledgement, a lot more recognition, for what we do. Because sometimes the hours are really long, and sometimes there's as many hugs and joy and as there are tears, and they can break your hearts too. It's not always glamorous and wonderful, but it's what we do, and we feel very, I say we, but feel very, we tuck them in at night, and they're resting well, because they can't speak or work for themselves, so we have to be those people for them, even when we're super tired. They're just as tired as we are, and we have a choice, and they don't, so we have to make sure that we take the best care of them. So and sometimes we are psychologists for the riders, and sometimes we're psychologists for the owners, and sometimes but it is incredible getting to, you get to work with some really incredible people, and you get to meet some really incredible people. I mean, the owners and the who make all of it happen, and the vets and the physios and the riders and the barriers, and you get to learn constantly, being around these animals. So yeah, but it's it is definitely not glamorous, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it is very fulfilling.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot more to it than just making the horses look pretty, for
Pretty. That's sort of
sure.
the least of what we do. Is like,
Yeah,
that's the icing on the cake. That's the zhuzhing we get to do to show off all of our hard work.
100%. And yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, I think it's wonderful that, in recent years, grooms seem to be getting a little bit more recognition and appreciation and all of that, because you name the owners and the riders and the trainers and the vets. Couldn't do it without them, but couldn't do any of this without the grooms
No,
either.
exactly.
Yeah. So you've done and continue to do many things in your career, but of course one of the most notable was working for the O'Connor event team with Karen and David and their horses. Can you kind of tell us how that came to be and what it was like getting to work for that team?
This is not a short answer, but I'll try to
That's
make it
fine.
brief.
We've got time.
I was working up in Massachusetts for a wonderful man and rider named Jim Stamets, and such a sweet. He was wonderful horseman, incredible horseman, and I had basically had he had convinced me to quit my job in Boston to come work for him full time, and we had a fantastic summer. He was very competitive on the mare that he was riding, and but he'd had an underlying heart condition that he was, in and out of the hospitals quite a bit, and he ended up going to sleep one night, not waking up, in November. And so the mare he'd been riding the mare that's called Ballymar, who the people that own it, John and Diane Pingree, who are very amazing people for our sport in their own right. They were the people that started the interdiscipline young rider championships at their farm in Hamilton, Massachusetts, at their flying horse farm, and just incredible people. And so I didn't know what to do. I had no job. I had nothing. I'd lost my friend and my boss, and I didn't really have a job, and I didn't know what to do. And the Pingrees called me and said, "Will you come over?" And I said, "Oh, sure, sure." And so I went over to their house, and I thought they were going to tell me that they were, the horse was going to go off to somebody else, and I was pretty happy about that. And they said, we've decided we're going to send, they called her Bally, we called her Amber. We're going to send Bally to Karen O'Connor. I said, "Oh my God, that's really great." And she said, because Karen and Jim had been working students for Tad Coffin together back in the early '80s. And I said, "Oh, I think that's a fantastic idea. That's so great." And they said, "But here's the thing: we'd like you to go with her." And I said, um, okay. Then I said, "When?" And she said, "Oh, you'd have to leave in 10 days."
Wow.
Okay. But at that point, I mean, I had no job or anything. My life was fairly flexible at that point. So I packed all my stuff up. I was supposed to stay with them and with the mare through Kentucky and sort of help her get through that journey to get to the Kentucky 3-day event. And so I packed all my stuff up and in my little blue Ford Escort station wagon and followed the trailer down to Middleburg, Virginia. And there I was, of course, Middleburg, Virginia was the Mecca. It was the place where you wanted to be. And it was, I was so scared. I was so scared. But they were wonderful. And I stayed with Karen's parents for the first week I was there. We left for Florida not long after. And probably about 3 weeks into it, Karen said, "Well, why don't you just come and work for us full time?" And I thought, yeah, I guess I could do that too. So it was an incredible opportunity, and I'm ever thankful to the Pingrees for giving me the leg up to allow me to do that. And yeah, they were just wonderful, wonderful people. So anyway, that's the long story of how I got to Karen David's.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And then what was it like being thrown into that and then all of a sudden working for such iconic riders and all their fantastically talented horses and then getting to travel to all these major events throughout the world?
Yeah, I am really lucky. I just happened to be at the, a little bit, not the right place at the right time. I worked really, really hard. I worked hard. I asked a lot of questions. I'm sure I annoyed our vet and farrier endless to the nth degree because you constantly want to know more, and what more we can do. Ask the other grooms that were there that had been there for so long. Got to meet some great people, other grooms for the other professionals, who are still, really good friends of mine to this day. Philip Dutton's groom Colby and his next groom Emma, and they're all very good friends of mine still. And it's kind of cool. So we just, you learn, and then it's just suddenly it's 2 years goes by, 3 years goes by, 5 years goes by, and you're on to the next adventure and another horse and another challenge of sorts, I guess it is, and trying to get to the next championship and what's the best way to do this and what do we need to do to get this horse there, and getting to know different horses and understanding their thing. And so yeah, it's been a really cool adventure. very, very lucky, and that has led me to again meet more incredible people all over the world. And yeah, it's fun. It's just been,
Yeah.
I feel very, very lucky and very fortunate that I miss Jim. He was such a kind man, and I remember the day after he died, I was mucking stalls, and it was raining and it was cold, and I remember thinking, I said to someone, I was like, why is this happening? Why is this
Yeah.
happening? And one of the boarders said, she said, we don't know right now, but there's a reason for this. And so I was like, I don't get that. I don't, I remember being so sad and frustrated and scared and all the things. And years later, it's sort of, I don't, all bad things can have a good thing come to it. And,
Yeah.
I was pretty lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, what a place it led you to. And
Yeah.
back to when you first started with them,
Yeah.
asking questions is how you learn, and it's how you keep advancing and adapting and all of that. So I think it's important, especially when you're in a new spot. And
Yes.
with horses, there's always so much more
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
learn. Yeah. Can you tell us about any moments or memories from your grooming career, whether that's with the O'Connors or elsewhere, that really stand out? I mean, I know it's
Oh
been a
my
life's
God.
work for
I
you,
was gonna
but
say, how much
maybe a
time do
few
we have
standouts.
today? um, oh gosh, there's so many great stories, so many cool horses I got to work with and people that I got to work with. And, obviously have, the highs, the very, very high and the very, very low of Theodore O'Connor, which I feel very lucky in a lot of ways. I got to be part of his team in horses like Mandiba, who I was there when he was broke and got him, to the World Championships and the Olympic Games. And then there are horses that never became famous that were just wonderful horses to be around. And, for one reason or another, nobody got to learn their names. And then there are horses that, come in and totally steal your heart, like Mr. Medicott. I mean, he's the crush that crushed my soul. So I just love that horse. And it's just, yeah, there's so many. I mean, Teddy winning the Pan Ams was incredible. The Pan Ams were an advanced level competition then, and that was pretty cool. And Mr. Medicott doing well, finishing in the top 10 at the Olympic Games was really cool. But even when it wasn't so glamorous and great, even, those are the trips that you make and the people, you don't maybe necessarily remember where you were, but you remember sitting in the back of a trailer having, playing cards for 6 hours on the way from one place to another, so there's that part of it too. But oh man, there's so many. People say, "Oh, do you have any pictures?" And I start with the pictures, and I'm like, "Oh, and then this one. Oh, and then look at this one." Oh, and this one too. I got so much pride of them. And little Upstage, who, oh God, he was six. He did 6 consecutive Kentuckys in long format, which was not normal back then. And he was a wonderful little sort of retrained little New Zealand thoroughbred that again stole my heart. So I just a lot of them that are just such cool horses that yeah, just getting to see the world. I mean, I went to 2 Olympic Games and World Championships and Pan Ams and badmintons and Burleys and wherever else, Canada, and all over the world. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's amazing where horses can take you. Really, no matter your discipline, but obviously at the top level of eventing and working for
yeah,
people like David and Karen, you got to see so much. And like you mentioned, you're these horses' nannies. You're the ones spending all this time with them. You know them inside out. So, and obviously, Karen and David well. And so when you see them succeed, I'm sure it was the most rewarding feeling, and it feels like, in a way your hard work has paid
yeah.
off and led to that moment.
And they were always so good about, they had the whole thing, and that's why they were the O'Connor event team, because they always said, we don't stand on the podium by ourselves. And I think that's a thing that makes you want to be there longer, that
Hmm.
sort of keeps you, that you are, that they respect your work, and they have, trying to think of the right word, but you're very appreciated, which is always nice when because sometimes you do these long hours in the barns and you feel like nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely a high level of appreciation from them.
Yeah, a team environment makes it a huge difference. And it's like you said, you're all in it together.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
everybody's
Yeah.
accomplishment.
The
Yeah.
highs and the lows.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then shifting gears a little bit. So from 2020 through 2022, you served as USEA president. How did that role come to be?
It was, oh, wow. That was, I'd been on the board of governors. I was asked to be on the board of governors probably in 2018, I reckon. And that was, again, that was, working with Karen and David. David had been doing a lot of governance work with the when the USET and the AHSA were trying to battle out who was going to be the voice of the horse sport in America, and they ended up doing the merger. And David was the sort of a big catalyst in making that happen. And he then became president of the USEF, what is now the USEF, and he did that for a long time. And so through that, and Karen sat on a lot of committees, and so it was something that was a bit instilled in us. Is again, if you want to make a change, if you want to make a difference, you have to become part of it. And do you care? So they a little bit pushed me to start going to the annual meeting, to sit on some committees, to be present. And they said, you have a different perspective than a lot of people because you're on the ground and you see a lot more. You're a bit of a broader. So I started doing that and getting on some committees, and again, then ended up on the board. And I'll never forget when they asked me to be on it, to be the president. This Catherine Cooper, who is the chairman of the nominating committee, was at Millbrook, and she called me, and I said, I'm just putting a bridle on. Can I call you back? And I was grooming for Jenny Karras, and she said, oh, you're in Millbrook. I'll come find you. And so she said, oh, we just had a conversation. We'd like you to be the next president. And I was like, you what? I said, what? And she said, yeah, we really think that you would do a great job and you'd really fit the bill. And I was like, I don't know if you know me real well, but so yeah. And the first person I saw just after I got sort of hit with that bomb was David, because he was there coaching some people. And I said to him, they just asked if I wanted to be president of the USEA. And he sort of thought, and he said, well, you kind of need a year to figure it out. I said, well, apparently I'd become president-elect for a year and then I'd be the president. He goes, yeah, you can do that. You'll be good. That'd be good. That'd be all right. It's like, I looked at him, I was like, you realize that you're going to be my phone a friend, like my very first phone call when anything weird happens. And he said, yeah. He said, don't worry about it. So they sort of convinced me that it'd be okay. And that I had a lot of amazing people that had my back, which was good. And just sort of taught me, not necessarily having my back was what I needed, but I needed people to help teach me along the way, because it was a very different from what I knew. So yeah, took over in January or December of 2019, and then boom, hit COVID. So my first year was for sure a learning curve like no other, but it was, again, amazing people that helped me sort of get through it, phoned a lot of friends, learned a lot. And it was a lot, but it was great. It was really great. And funny enough, by the last year, I even said, I was like, I feel like I need one more year. I feel like I just got my groove on this. And they said, oh, they're like, oh, would you do it for another 3 years? I said, no, I'm not doing it for 3 years. I just want 1 year. I said, I missed a year with COVID. I didn't get anything done. And so, but I did get a lot of things done. And I have to remember that, the frustration of it wanting more and to do more. And yeah, so, but I did get a lot done. And so there are a lot of things that I'm very proud of. I just, you wish you could, some things that you would follow through on more, but it was a wild ride.
And having COVID at the very beginning just threw the whole world for a loop.
Oh my gosh. It was something. So yeah, that was interesting, but yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So did having that role kind of like give you any different perspective than you had previously had? What do you think you really took away and learned from being USEA president?
You learned a little bit about who your go-to people are, who a little bit of who's going to get something done. That's I think is a big thing. And not necessarily the politics of it all, because I wouldn't say there's a lot of politics in our sport per se, but a little bit on how to, you learned how to navigate things. If something was really important to get done, you sort of, and you triage things, right? You like, how important is this? Is this the important thing? And also, the understanding that this one little tiny rule that needs to get changed, it's better to get, something that's broader. Start with something broader and then work your way down. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
you start a rule. If you want a rule to be, put into place, you start it big and then you work, or vice versa. You work it down, or you start with a little rule and then you can make it bigger, or to that effect. So you just got to get it started, and then a lot of times it will roll on with it. Like the compulsory retirement rule. We did the research on that, and we, got the echo rating stuff on that. And originally it started out training and above, and then suddenly someone said, well, why don't we do it for all levels? And it was this thing. It's like, you know what, we got to get this passed right now. So right now we're just going to go training and above, and then we can change it. So it's a understanding, and also not, with that, we did also a lot of work with the federation, and we learned, with that, sometimes some of the rules that they wanted to change was not for eventing, was for the sport of equestrian as a whole.
Sure.
So understand that there's a broader part of it. And, again, when you live on the East Coast, I grew up in Massachusetts, lived in Virginia, now I live in Florida, and you can be so really myopic about that, just the East Coast. And the other thing that you see is that there are a lot of people between, I-95 and I-5 on the West Coast, that love the sport, that love eventing, that are passionate about it, that want to be a part of it, that deserve to have a voice, that are part of the U.S. Eventing Association, and you get to know a lot of those people. And just because geographically they're not near you does not mean that they're not part of it, So I think, and I think the East Coast is very guilty of that, of sort of seeing only what they see and not understanding the rest of the country and all the great things that happen throughout there. I mean, it's all the hard work, and they have to work just that much harder to get it done.
Right. Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And I know you mentioned, obviously, you wish you'd had a little bit more time and things to do, but what were you proud of what you did during that time, or what you accomplished then?
For sure, compulsory retirement rule, I know there's a lot of people that don't like it, but I think that was the officials are very appreciative of it, because it takes the emotion out of this. When they see someone that had 5 or 6 rails down, they would have to have a conversation with them and say, look, we're really worried about you going out on the cross country. We don't think you and your horse are having a great day today. Maybe you should, wait another day. Whereas now, the statistics show that horses that have more than 5 rails have a higher percentage of fall rates. So with that, our fall rates have gone way down in America. It's not, we're never going to, I get corrected by David O'Connor all the time, who's a very big safety man. You're never making our sport safer. You are reducing the risk. So we reduce the risk of a horse fall by quite a bit. And the FEI has also picked up the same rule. So that, and a lot of frangible technology, worked very hard with Jonathan Halling about frangible technology. Started a grooms committee, which I'm very proud of too, which is really fun. If we could ever be as great as the British Grooms Association, but again, start small, try to get larger. So
baby steps.
we're just baby steps, one foot in front of the other. Exactly. So there's that. What else? Oh, the under 21s. That was something else that I started, was the EA 21, which that is a program that is flying. It is an amazing, at the time we were, when I first took over, for the USEA, the USEF did not have a great relationship with its affiliates, and that wasn't just USEA, it was a lot of the affiliates. So one of my main goals was to try to bridge that gap. And so we ended up having monthly meetings with, the director of eventing, was Jenny Autry, then became Amber Braun, and we would have meetings every month and talk about whatever we needed to talk about. Sometimes it was just, hey, how you been? How was your vacation? And sometimes we actually had things that we needed to talk about and discuss, and sort of, so a lot of times we just didn't want 2 people doing the same job. It's like, if you guys are taking care of this, then we won't worry about it. Or, hey guys, we really need to get this rule passed. How can you help us? Can we, this is explaining things and how this, why it's important and stuff. So there was, that was great. And so the EA 21 came down to us during that time, because the high performance was changing their program, and they had an 18 and under program. And so they said, here, you guys take this. I said, okay, what do you want us to do with it? And they said, doesn't matter. We don't care. You guys do it. It's yours now. I said, well, who's funding it? You guys are funding it. Okay. Like, all right. So So anyway, we did get it started, and I put a group of people together that really have busted their butts. They were amazing, and they said, "Oh, let's wait till next year." I said, "Nope, we're doing it this year. We're just getting this done. We've got to get it started. Let's roll." And it has become such a successful program, and it is awesome, and it's sort of doing a bit of a twofold. So it's been helping the under 21 kids get recognized and getting them on a pathway if they want to regional camps and then into a national camp. But it's also the eventing coaches program, which is which got redone again. There's another, I guess now I think about it, I got that done too. They sort of regrouped from there was the instructor certification program, and it was just a little bit falling flat. And so, and I always hated the phrase instructor, because that's just someone that teaches a lesson and takes your $50 and or whatever it is, $100, and rolls along the way. Where a coach encompasses more of, the soundness of your horse, what tack you're wearing, how's your tack fit, what are you feeding your horse, what's its conditioning program, what competition you go into next. And I think that was a bit that was lacking in our sport. So anyway, long and long of that story is that we ended up with ECP coaches coaching these under 21s. And so, and David O'Connor, he sort of has overseen a lot of that because he's part of both programs and head of the EA 21. So it sort of has worked in a really cool twofold, and it's and the program has it's been incredible. The camps are full with wait lists, and it's awesome. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun.
That's really awesome. See, you accomplished quite a bit.
I know. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I did that too. I was like, but again, it's not me personally. Like, there's just cool people that you sort of are like, hey, I need you to help me get this going. And I'm sure some of them don't want to talk to me anymore, but but they're no, it's so good.
Yeah. But just like, grooming and working for an eventing team, it takes a village. It takes
it takes a total village. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then, yet another thing you've done in your career is help with the organization of many horse trials. Can you talk a little bit about what the organizational side of competition is like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not dissimilar to having a team of horses on the road, I got to say, with the different levels. And I was lucky enough when I stopped working for Karen and David, and I was just doing some freelance grooming. And Shelley Page has been a good friend of mine for a while, and she had done a bunch of organizing, and then sort of didn't do that for a little bit, and then was coming back into it. And she said, "Hey, what are you doing next week?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I got something. I don't know." She said, "Hey, you want to come to Wellington and help me run the eventing showcase down here?" And I said, "Sure." I don't know. And I thought, all right, I'll give this a go. So down I went, and just again, like, she's a fantastic mentor and has taught me everything I need to know. And that was back in, I don't know, 2016, maybe 2017, which led into working at she was the discipline director for eventing for the World Championships in 2018. And so I got to be her assistant there, and then just sort of has carried on and on and on. And so now I'm a co-organizer with her at a lot of events, and I do a few by myself. And it's very interesting, but it's a little bit, it's different, but the same, where, there are a lot of prep work way ahead of time. And again, the team of people that are around you, and, your officials and all that kind of stuff. And it's creating a team within the team to execute the competition itself. So, and everyone has its challenge, and you sort of feel pretty happy at the end when it's all been safe and well. And it's it's a lot more hours than grooming, I can tell you that.
Really? Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're full on. I mean, from the moment you get there, you hit the ground running, and there's a lot more to it than I think a lot of people realize, between just again, different levels of different competitions and different budgets for different competitions, and depending on what you're going to be doing. I mean, there's some events that I set up the dressage rings, I decorate the cross country courses, I'm painting cross country jumps, I'm setting the show jumps, I'm then doing all the orders of go and the clipboards and and then there's other shows when the bigger international shows that you're sort of just making sure, trying to, you have a lot of officials coming in, sort of managing that. And it's different, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
But I still get back to grooming every once in a while, because I can't give that up.
Of course. Yeah. That'll always be part of
Yeah.
you. But yeah, it makes sense that it's so much work because everybody there is relying on you and on everybody
Yeah.
that's behind the scenes. There's so much that
Yeah.
even just a small little horse show, like there's a lot
Exactly.
going
Yeah.
on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of on a serious note, what do you think that the sport of eventing or just equestrian sport in general can improve and grow? We've talked to David actually on our podcast and in a recent article kind of about just the horse industry in general, the social license to operate and our public perception, or just in general, what are ways that you think that the industry can continue to improve on?
Oh, that's a big one. I think we have to all be really careful and we all have to really look out for the sport. I know people on social media are quite quick to, a little bit trigger happy and um, in videos that we have in post, we all have to sort of, you know, look at it, think about it, react, put the phone down, pick it back up again, and
Yeah.
and think about it. We need to, not to say that, and I'm not blaming everybody, but that, a few bad seeds can really spoil the salad now, can it? So we have to make
Yeah.
sure um, that we all look out for each other and look out for the sport in general. What happened to the racing industry was a bit tough, and now the government, moderates it and stuff. So I think we just have to look, be responsible. Riders have to be responsible. Grooms have to be responsible. Owners have to be responsible. The enthusiasts have to be responsible, and it's also people want to be part of something that's great and good.
Yeah.
Everyone. So to be able to collect spectators and sponsors and stuff, we want things always to be the glass half full. And never to see the other side of it, I think is something that is really important. I think we need to keep promoting it, keep looking after our horses, keep loving on our horses. I mean, at the end of the day, without them, we have nothing.
Yep.
So we don't have a sport without the horses. So we have to
Absolutely.
continue looking after them and not having, people talk about an aspiration gap of, trying to think that you could do more than you really can. So we have to make sure that that gap is, you know, keep everything in reality and real. I mean, again, at the end of the day, too, we are people playing with horses,
Mhm.
and we have to remember that too. But they are, again, they can't take care of themselves, so it's our responsibility to take care of them. So, and again, we don't want the government doing that. We got to do it ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The social licensing is a really big. It's a really big deal. It's a really big deal.
Yeah. It really is. And I think that's the most important point is the horses are the center of it all. It's why we're here. We fell
Yeah,
in love with them in the first place, and we have to keep that in mind first and foremost at all
yeah.
times.
And they're
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, what they do
Yeah.
for us, I mean, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Right. It
It's
is.
amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my final question for you before we move into the audience Q&A portion is, do you have any advice that you would give to any aspiring grooms or any aspiring equine professionals?
Um, I have a couple. I like always keep an open mind. Find someone to mentor you. I think that is a really critical thing, and I think it's something that's really, really missing in the equestrian sport as a whole. You see a lot of younger people sort of get to a level, and then they decide that they can, they've got to a level, they get themselves a logo, and they go out on their own, and they're missing that mentorship of the people that can. There's only so much you can learn by reading a book or watching a video clip. You got to touch it, feel it, experience it, the good and the bad, and you got to know how to cope through a lot of that stuff. And I think the right mentor is so critical and so key. And it's something that, again, people are just too quick. I need to, but I can do this by myself. Well, not always. I think that's a really cool, critical thing. And whether you're a groom, find a great place where you can tuck in and be the number two. Don't try to be the number one straight away. Be the number two, and then earn your spot as number one, and then just keep learning, keep asking questions. There are definitely things that work for you specifically or work for this horse specifically. And in Karen and David's program, we had things that didn't seem normal to other people, but that worked for them and it worked for the team. So that's why we did those things. But always listened and always asked the questions and continued, interdiscipline, like go to a jumper show, see what they do, watch the warm up. Don't just be the ring, but see how they get to the ring. And, again, watch the grooms, like watch what they're doing from the moment they walk out there to the rider gets on to, how it all is. So just watching and learning and being, and just absorb it all in. And, some of it you'll always take, and, you take away a little bit from each place, and you become yourself. And then again, keep learning,
Yeah.
even when you are yourself, keep learning.
Yeah, there's always more to learn. You can't ever get too comfortable, and things are always evolving too. And every horse is different. Every situation's different. So
every groom has stuck their finger in a supplement and tried it themselves. We all do that, and it's disgusting. But we're like, ooh, what is it? Ooh, no. It's like, what's this one? This smells different. We've all done those things, so it's important.
Yeah. All right, so our audience questions, our first question's from Jenny. She wants to know, how would you advise someone interested in getting involved with their sports affiliate?
I would start at the local level. See if there's a local, depending if it's eventing or jumping or dressage, there's always a local a combined training association or a dressage association, and start there and get involved with them there. And then that can sort of open a door, and you can see, where you think you might fit in with them. And then that would sort of get you into the affiliate. And then with the affiliate, then it can, again, careful what you wish for, because the door will open pretty quickly. And yeah, it's good to give back. I think that's a really important thing too. So if you do get involved, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Grace's question is, what are your favorite grooming tips or hacks?
Oh, goodness. If one of the biggest things I'll say that is just, groom your horse every day. And then with that, you don't have to, when you're getting ready for a show, if your horse is always, not actually show ready, but always looking its top. Curry combs are the best things in the whole world. They not only do they get the, loosen all the crap on the horse, it warms the horse's body up, but also when you're currying, you can see where your horses might be sore.
Yeah.
And then you do a whole once over. I love those little mitts. I think they're called hands-on mitts, because you can groom them, and they've got, little bits and things so you can get down on their legs. And then with that, you make sure that you check every inch of their body at least once a day to, see any changes or bumps or lumps or heat or whatever it is. So that would probably be my best. And witch hazel, best stuff in the whole world. Witch hazel cures everything. It's like Windex, my big fat Greek wedding. Windex is great. There's a lot of, good products, but it's keeping things simple too. There's a lot of junk we can put on our horses and junk we can feed our horses. But at the end of the day, it's like sort of everybody always goes back to the same tried and true. We learn more about nutrition. We learn more about things that we can use and not use and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's just sort of good old elbow grease and good grain and good hay and good grass. And, pretty much, we've all seen those horses in the field that are absolutely like stargazing shiny, and they're retired and they haven't had a brush on them in years. But good nutrition keeps them shiny and dappily.
Yeah, for sure. Sophie's question is, where is your favorite place that horses have taken you?
Oh, wow.
You can name more than one.
I know, I was going to say, I'll say the London Olympics were pretty incredible because we were right in downtown London. And the Olympic Games in general I've been so lucky to have been able to go to 5 now, actually, 3 as a groom and 2, one as a and 2 as sort of behind the scenes type of person. One working for the U.S. team, and one as a technical official. I was in charge of all the cooling tents and ice and all the things at the Tokyo Olympics, and then worked for the U.S. team in Versailles. And the Olympic Games in general are just pretty incredible. But I'd say that either London, Hong Kong was a pretty incredible competition. Even it was not so successful for the U.S. team, but pretty great. But London, I think, was by far the best competition part. But Badminton, Burley, Kentucky, I don't know, Rebecca Farm. I was out at Seattle at Aspen Farms the past weekend helping my friend Jonathan Elliott run his event, and oh man, it's beautiful. I mean, it's pretty much there, but I guess the peak would have been the London Olympics.
Yeah, again, horses can take you some pretty
everywhere.
incredible places.
Everywhere, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Trisha asked, how have you seen the sport change over the years since you very first have been involved?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
um, I will say I'll go back to the mentorship part of it. You know, it was interesting. I was Joni Morris, who runs the was the vetting director for a while and runs the Maryland Five Star. We were texting the other day because we got to know her because she was a groom for Philip Dutton, so we're friends since then, and Boston Red Sox fans at the same time, which is, you know, good and bad. But we were talking the other day about the number of horses at the top level, and we are trying to figure out why. And she said, "Look, you know, she." Said how many horses are entered at Rebecca Farm. I'm just sort of event staff at Rebecca Farm. I go and help there every year. And I said, I think like 10, which actually for them is not bad numbers. She said that is the 33 horses in the 3 4 longs in North America so far this year. And that's between Tryon, Bromont, and Rebecca Farm. And, you know, 15 years ago, we would have 90 horses at
Mhm.
Foxhall and another 100 horses at Kentucky. And we had 23 American based horses at Kentucky this year with 32 that started. I think it was 32 that started, and only 33 horses. And again, trying to figure out that gap, like why. You know, we know that the numbers are there, but now we're trying to figure out why. And, you know, again, and we both talked about this whole thing about the mentorship, that there are a lot of people that again have gone and done one advanced horse trials or one thing, and then they go out on their own, and they're missing that gap of knowledge to keep for the sustainability of it. I think for a
Mhm.
while we were breeding different horses. You know, when the format changed from long format to short format, people were buying the heavier horses that were better in the dressage, thinking that without the roads and tracks and steeplechase that they'd be able to get it done. But you still have to have a horse that has enough blood, can still do the distance, can do all the phases. You know,
Mhm.
still cross country is still the key phase, but I think we're missing a lot of the gaps in there. Are and with that, we were having soundness problems, especially in America.
Yeah.
We were having horses that they are one and done. They'd go to one championship and we'd never see them again, or they'd do one Kentucky 3 day, we'd never see them again. Gone were the days of the, you know, it funny enough, with a long format, those horses had such longevity. The first horse that did multiple from 2010 to like 2020, I think it was, there was only one horse that had done more than one championship, which is
Wow.
a lot. I mean, that's ridiculous. So there was a massive gap of attrition rate. So anyway, so there was that part of the sport, and I think people have gotten much better about that, especially in America now. In Europe, they were, you know, these horses were coming back. We're like, why are they winning all the time? Well, they're winning because they get to keep practicing on the same horses. They're not trying to learn the new ones again or bring them up again and do all that. So we've definitely gotten better about that, but I think there's definitely a gap of the next generation that's just not learning how to continually be sustainable at that level, and, you know, be competitive at that level. And um, yeah, just a funny, it's a very good question. With that, has it changed? There's been a lot of really great things. I think we're much safer than we used to be. There's a lot of good technology, especially for on the veterinary side of it, incredible
Mhm.
technology. And again, not stuff that's actually making the healing process faster. We're just making it better. And I think we are pretty lucky. We can diagnose a lot more things for these horses. We can make their careers better and longer, and they feel better in their bodies and stuff. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things. I think, you know, the internet's been the good news and the bad news for horse sports
Yeah.
too. You know, when it comes to the good things and the bad things. But I think, you know, again, the horses are the horses, and they'll always, you know, they're tried and true. They keep us humble, right?
Yes.
they're always gonna
Yes.
give us,
They're good
make
at
us
that.
really happy. They're always gonna keep us pretty humble, right? As they
Yes.
would say, you know, rooster one day and you can be the feather duster the next. So we have to, you know, they're very good at that. But yeah, there's been a lot of changes. Some for the good, some for the bad.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Adriana asked, what's a mistake you've made as a groom that maybe served as a good learning lesson?
um, oh, we all make mistakes all the time. We forget things all the time.
Sure.
I
We're only human.
actually one of my biggest when I was at the Pan American Games in Rio with Teddy, with Theodore O'Connor. I had two horses in quarantine. I had our reserve horse was a neat thoroughbred called All Star, called him Ivan, and he was a big lanky thoroughbred. So and he was going, the horses were getting ready to go to the airport, and I had everything packed for both horses down where we were in quarantine. And I was sort of repacking. I was like, Teddy, Ivan, my cross country boots, because I keep everything, all my cross country boots and my show jumping boots, I keep in like a little stuff sack just so they're always together so I can just grab them and plunk them down. And so I was just plump, 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 schooling bandages. And Teddy never didn't wear hind boots at all unless he was going cross country because it was really weird. So I was, thunk, 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 making sure I had the right size girth, because it was a 20-inch girth rather than a 26-inch, for the dressage saddle. And so I was doing all that, and we get to Rio, and everything's going well. And it's the night before cross country, and I'm thinking, I don't think I've seen those cross country boots since I've been here. Huh. And so lo and behold, I go through the whole trunk and I don't have Teddy's cross country boots. And there I am in Brazil where they don't have any tack shops, and I have a pony, which nobody
Yeah, I
else.
was going to say, mind you, Teddy's much different size.
Yeah, he's tiny. So funny enough, somebody did have, one of the Canadians had packed an extra set of tiny little boots that they had for their daughter's horse. Just happened to get stuck in with their other stuff, and I was like, I will give you $1 million to buy these boots off of you, and so that was, and then I used a pair of front boots on his hind legs because they fit fine. And so anyway, as all things were well, but it was one of those things I solved the problem, and then I called Karen and I was like, so here's the situation. I said, I forgot his boots. I didn't forget them. I just sent them home with Ivan. And she's like, oh, I said, but I've got boots and we're good. She's like, okay, fine. And she just, as long as I told her, I was like, I have solved the problem, but just so you know, so I had to let her know. But that was kind of a big, and then I used to always, two things I always forgot to pack were girths and grain scoops. And those, again, the grain scoop is all right because you sort of can figure out like 3 handfuls was sort of a scoop, and that was fine. But the girths were, I would always forget them. And then Karen, after a while, would just make me start buying them. So I was like, okay, girths, I got to remember my girths.
I mean, that's one
Which
way
is
to
fair enough.
help you
I forgot
remember.
them. So yeah, we ended up with a lot of girths. So there we go.
That's funny. Hey, we're only human. We're gonna
exactly.
Things.
I know. Yeah. I was like, I remembered everything else.
Macy's question is, did you ever get nervous for the horses and riders that you groomed for?
Terrible nervous. I would get so nervous, not necessarily in the dressage, but on the cross country. Oh my God. It was all I could do to watch. I would get so nervous, and for so many reasons, because you want them to be safe and you want them to be well, but you also want them to be good, and you want success. Like, these are your kids, these are your kids you're sending out, and you just hope that it all goes well, but then you also want to make sure that they're okay, because we've all seen the other side of it. And so oh my God, you get so nervous. Oh my gosh, where you can't breathe, and you'll actually see most grooms are that way. Like Steph Simpson, that works for Boyd, she can't watch. She cannot watch, and she never watches. And so if we're all near the tent, we're like, good through 5. She's like, okay. And she'll be standing outside the tent, and she's got her lead rope, and she's just sort of twisting it. And it's, oh man, you get so nervous. And again, you want it to be successful because we've all worked so hard. And at that point, there's nothing else you can do. You've done your job, and it's their turn to do their job. And you just hope for all the good things, but that's it. Yeah. Nervous. Oh, so nervous. Sleepless nights. Oh, terrible.
Yeah. Terrible. No, it makes sense. I mean, you put in all that work. They're your baby, the horses. And like you said, it's totally out of your control at that point. Yeah. So yeah. But makes sense. Well, I think we've covered everything. That was really interesting, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, answer all these questions, and share all your insight. I mean, obviously you've done a lot throughout your career and a lot of really cool things. So I know I enjoyed it. Hope our audience did too.
Thanks for having me. Sorry, I hope I didn't blab too much, but
no, it's perfect. Perfect. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys so much.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You guys too. Thanks for being here. All right, bye.